seated the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and irreligion appeared from his back, where horrible death takes place for the living entity. Religion means devotional service to the personality of Godhead, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, as well as in the Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, the last instruction is to give up all other engagements in the name of religion and take the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam also confirms that the highest perfection of religion is that which leads to the devotional service of the Lord, unmotivated and unhampered by material impediments. Religion, in its perfect form, is devotional service of the Lord, and irreligion is just the opposite. The heart is the most important part of the body, whereas the back is the most neglected part. When one is attacked by an enemy, one is apt to endure attacks from the back and protect himself carefully from all attacks on the chest. All types of irreligion spring from the back of Brahmā, whereas real religion, the devotional service of the Lord, is generated from the chest, the seat of Narayan. Anything which does not lead to the devotional service of the Lord is irreligion, and anything which leads to the devotional service of the Lord is called religion. Om Agyana Tamanandasya Gananjanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunamanitam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanneham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Parakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahaganan Raganaptam Mitam Tam Shajivam Savadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ritam Shri Vishakam Mitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikas Swamaniti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivisheshu Shunivari Pashkyatar Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Vande Yat Prasada Shaya Viryataha Sangarat Yat Karavatad Agnya Siddhanta Sanmanim. Okay, so both the verses. So pulaho nābhito jajñe, Pulastya karṇayoḥ ṛṣiḥ, Aṅgirā mukhato, kṣṇo trir, marīcir manaso bhavat. Pulastya was generated from the ears, Aṅgirā from the mouth, Atri from the eyes, marīciḥ from the mind, and Pulaha from the navel of Brahmā. And the next verse, Dharma sthanat dakṣinato yatra narayana svayam adharma prashtato yasman mitro loka bhayankaraha. Religion was manifest from the breast of Brahmā, wherein is seated the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. And irreligion appeared from his back, where horrible death takes place for the living entity. So, let's see here. Who's on the screen? You're on the screen. So I'm going to send you, do it from my computer. I'm going to send you 4 pictures, and then you can just pull them up. And I'll kind of like go through some of those pictures. I'll tell you when to pull them up. So, let me, having some technical difficulties. I'll send those to you real quick so I can just focus. Okay. Ollie. All right, you get that? Okay, you don't have to pull them up now, but so and the 2 verses a day, as being discussed, we'll continue on describing the secondary creation. So Brahmā is creating and such like that. And so there's been a lot of discussion of that previously, discussing with the 4 Kumaras, Rudra. Then Rudra had offspring, and then that was a problem. And so now Brahmā is creating living beings with more of a Brahminical temperament. And so these, in the previous verse, no Acharya has given any comments on that. But this is some of the names mentioned. So these are like great rishis and direct descendants of Brahmā. And so like originally, I was thinking about saying something about some of these individuals. I may say something about a couple of them, but there's actually so much that could be said about like all of them. They're huge personalities actually in the Shastra. For instance, like, I mean, Aṅgirā is briefly mentioned in Bhagavatam, but he's mentioned in this connection with Chitraketu Maharaj, where he blessed him to have a son. And then Pulastya, there's some things mentioned, but they're all like they're like not exactly like Prajapatis, but they're like help populate the universe. So they have like a lineage, and it's described that I believe Pulastya, his like lineage is like the demoniac living entities, and so like that. And I believe Ravana is a descendant of Pulastya actually, not like directly, but I believe that's there. I remember that, but I didn't like look that up because I didn't want to like get all too much into that. And so these are like great living entities, and it's an amazing aspect of it also, which blows my mind, is this principle Brahmā is able to create some through his like body, and practically like out of like, I don't want to say thin air, but he's just able to like create things like that. And I don't know all the science behind it, but I was listening to a talk by Prabhu, maybe that was last week. He was just making the point that like this theory of, I guess that's Newton, that like matter can't be like created or destroyed or whatever, energy. He's saying that that's actually not true, because we see like in Bhagavatam, there's like, he was talking about one particular purport, how like things are created through like ether and stuff like that. So he's saying like on a subtle level, they're able to like create things. So we see that Brahmā is like creating different living entities and like practically like dynasties, heads of dynasties through his bodies. And how is that like possible? I think it's like pretty far out, but then I was remembering we also hear a little esoteric, but that is described that Radharani's glance, I think is Nayana Mandri, who is Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So like even in like the spiritual world, like some of these different actions and things and like items, they are like personalities also. So this is like also amazing, but it's still like it's on the material sphere, 100%. It's like there's nothing spiritual going on here. It's spiritual in the sense, I mean, these entities are being created, and then they'll help carry out the functions of the universe. And we see that previously described that that Brahmā or Narada Muni was born from the best deliberation of Brahmā, which I think is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes a point that is like devotional service. So all these different personalities, they're created from Brahmā, and then they engage in the universe. But still, even though they're direct descendants of Brahmā, it's not that like they just get to chill out. They have like duties to do and functions, and some of that is like difficult. I'll read something here about Pulastya, because I pulled something there. It's interesting actually, and there's like a lot to learn. You don't have to pull this up, but this is from the 3rd canto, 8th chapter, text 9. So let's just hear. I'll just read part of the purport. So, the great sage of the name Pulastya is the father of all demoniac descendants. Once upon a time, Parashara began a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. So it was pretty intense. The great sage Vasishtha Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashara to stop the deadly action. And because of Vasishtha's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashara could not deny the request. Parashara, having stopped the sacrifice, Pulastya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker of the Vedic literatures called the Puranas. If anybody needs to, you can take water from me. This thing's filled up. Okay, just making sure. So Parashara's action was appreciated by Pulastya because Parashara had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical forgiveness.
So I'll kind of stop there. But anyways, it's making the point that like Parashara wanted to kill all of Pulastya's descendants. And so Parashara chilled out and stopped. And Pulastya appreciated that this Brahminical quality of Parashara, that he was able to forgive. And that's a big thing, actually, and it's a huge discussion. But especially like when talking about like Brahminical qualifications and such like that, sometimes we can, and that's important too. I mean, what is Gyanam Viganam? But this quality of like being able to actually like forgive. And we see that in Shastra time and time again of different individuals being tested and them actually forgiving. So anyways, this is some side little thing. Obviously, like forgiveness isn't like the highest religious principle, but we do see in Shastra of like individual. There's a whole seminar given by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, but we do see like in Shastras of individuals forgiving, and then even of the highest platform devotees not even taking any offense to begin with. But it's definitely like something to like keep in mind and practice. And if anybody heard the recent class that His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj gave in Zagreb, he kind of like talks about that point, which may be more relevant for individuals practicing Krishna consciousness and then getting fried out about something that happened, which, okay, may have been heavy, but then still being like angry at an individual like 20, 30, 40 years later and like not letting go of that. And that's like happened. I mean, it doesn't happen, it happens and it goes on. And I was talking to Brahmā about that actually last week, of just like different individuals that just like never let go of stuff that goes on, and then it's like every time you talk to them, it's like, well, back in like 1996, such and such, guru did this to me and said that. So anyways, this is a side point, but we just see like that. So that situation happened with Pulastya, and then Aṅgirā we said a little bit about. So anyways, a lot of these personalities, different things can be said about that. So you can pull up some of those pictures I sent you. So just kind of run through those real quick. And then the last two are kind of more related to the class. So let me see here. So not this one. So those last two you can go to. So this here, just to kind of give context. Anyway, so in the beginning we were discussing of like this whole situation. So Brahmā was like sitting on his lotus, and he was like experiencing the winds and the tsunamis, the colossal waves, and so that's kind of like the situation. So if you look at that, actually, it's that little lotus, there's that lotus flower, and then that stem, that's actually where all the universes are created. And I've heard also that Brahmā creates the universe through like, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but like the ingredients are supplied like within that lotus stem, and he creates through somehow or other through that. So Brahmā creates the 14 planetary systems within that lotus. So you can see actually that like, relatively speaking, it's an insignificant space like in the cosmic creation, because it's covered over like that by those stems, or like the outer portion. So you can go to the next one. I guess maybe it might be back. Yeah, so anyways, this is like a really nice picture here. I don't know, anyways, I'm showing these. I don't know if everybody's like seen them or not, but I think that it's revolutionary actually, Srila Prabhupada's artwork and his disciples able to capture like some of these amazing points and amazing depictions of the Bhagavatam and encapsulate spiritual points. It's like super attractive actually. So this is obviously another famous picture of Brahmā getting angry at the four Kumaras, which we've been discussing so much, and then Rudra being generated. And so, from my understanding, Prabhupada gave like gave some direction when creating these pictures, and it depended on the artist. Like there's different letters you see with like Jadharani, and like she'll write to Prabhupada about like to do this and do that, and there'll be like a whole depiction that we'll do like this, and then it's like that, and they would go to questions and ask Prabhupada how to draw stuff, and like that. So Prabhupada would personally explain, how things look like. And we see too that Brahmā in all of our artwork is depicted as looking young. And if you go and look in other like maybe like, for lack of a better word, like traditional like Hindu pictures of like Brahma, he's depicted as like very old. So there's something like interesting and unique that Srila Prabhupada did. And Kalki-Prabhu also tells of remembrance that he drew like one picture kind of like randomly one time, like Krishna and the Cowherd Boys, and he was showing it to Srila Prabhupada. I don't know if you've heard that remembrance. So he was like showing Prabhupada the picture, and Prabhupada was asking, okay, like what's like going on? He was just like, oh, Krishna and the Cowherd Boys are playing, and he's like, what's the sloka? Like, what's the verse? And he's like, oh, it's like no verse. It's kind of just like something, just happening. It's just like, they're just playing, they're hanging out. And Prabhupada instructed him at that time that like the picture should be like based on some like sloka or some verse. And so if you look at like the different artworks also, majority of them, that there's, anyways, some things are like slightly not correct, but anyways, it's okay. But they're in line with Shastra actually, like different like pictures with like Krishna, he has like a certain type of garland on and such, and I believe that all the pictures, like if you see of like Vishnu Tattva, they have like garlands on it, such like that, and kind of going on. So it's an amazing like contribution of Srila Prabhupada actually, and it's something that like will still continue. And then I sent you that funny picture today, Chandracharya. To pull that one up. But even too, like there's like these showing like in the Bhagavatam like actual like depictions, and then there's like the philosophy also, which is like pretty far out. And I found one today. It was one. it's a pretty funny picture, but it's the one that we all know that I don't even know exactly. I guess the metaphor of the camel that eats the thorns, and so the camel likes the taste of its own blood. So similarly, like someone who's addicted to sex, they don't realize that they're expending their blood, in the name of sense gratification. So anyways, there's some picture like that of some camel chewing on some thorns, and there's some blood coming out. So it's, and then what to speak of like the other pictures also of like, changing the bodies, and then we have like in the inside of the journey of self-discovery, there's like that eternality, and then you have like death on one side, and then the goddess of life on the other side, and then you have like the person that's going through it, so depicting that the soul is eternal. So a lot of these pictures explain that and show those different things. So you can go to the last one, the one after that. Then you come back to that. So this particular picture is relevant today and with a lot of the verses, because this verse shows like Brahma create like how like the different parts of the body that things were created from Brahma, and some of the different things that he created. And it's probably a little hard to see, but you see up top. Maybe I'll pull it up on my thing also so I can kind of see it better. But you see up top that it's mentioned like the different kleshas that were created, I believe that were discussed in the beginning of this chapter. So, like, what is that here? So you have like sense of self-deception. So I don't know what's really going on in that picture there. It looks like that guy's about to smoke some intoxicant. But he's about to deceive himself. The fear of death, that's pretty self-explanatory. Anger after frustration. And a lot of these things we probably experience also, getting angry after frustration. Sense of false ownership. It looks like that guy is holding a pot of gold or something valuable, and he looks very happy about it. And then, what is this here? Bodily conception. So then there's Mataji looking in the mirror at herself. So it's like showing like that. And then you have like on top of Brahma's head, the 4 Kumaras are there. Between his eyes, Rudra. There's so many different things. Narada Muni's there. You have the, I forget exactly where that comes from, but you have the Vedic, what is that? Notes, Sarigama Pa Dha Nisa. You have the different Vedas coming out of his mouth. Dakshas coming from his thumb, like that. And then then Kardama is at the bottom, and I believe he comes from his shadow. And then there's a deer down there. Anybody know about the deer? I don't remember. I was looking at that today a couple times. Maybe. I don't know. Oh, yeah, she became a deer, huh? Oh, that's what that probably is. Vak. She became a deer. Anyways, I'm not going to talk on that. We'll save that for whoever gets that coming up. when we get there. I've been thinking about that a lot recently and talking about that. But anyways, thank you for clarifying that. There's some other stuff going on there too, but I can't read it exactly. But anyways, this is an amazing picture. And I think I see Paramatma here centered right in the center, the heart. So that's kind of what we're discussing today. And then irreligion is on the back, but we don't really see that there. So anyways, I remember and back in the day, I was probably, what was that? That was here actually in Atlanta at the Rath Yatra. So it was probably like 2012 or something, or 13, probably 2013. The Festival of India was here. So part of the Festival of India, they of course put up all the different pictures. So I remember really clearly like staring at this picture and just like looking at everything going on. I was like, whoa, that's like crazy. So it's really amazing actually. So anyways, the verse we're talking on previously, and I just showed this just to show in case devotees haven't seen this, of the artwork and showing the depictions of that. And there's so much there going on. And then we'll see in the next verse, it's mentioned from his lips came greed and what is this here? I can't read this. I think lust, greed, and something else. Let me see. Let me just pull it up here real quick. So the speaker will speak on that tomorrow. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's some. So greed. My thing's off-centered. Give me 1 second. This is using computers. Okay, so yeah, lust, desire. Oh, it's from the heart. Okay, so what is it? So greed from the lips. Like that. And so anyways, the next verse is kind of talking about like the bad qualities. And then because in this verse here, we're talking about like irreligion and religion. So dharma and adharma. So that verse is, so anyways, that picture's kind of there. And then you can go to the other one after that, and then I'll kind of chill out with that. And then you can just leave that up. So this is another picture. It's kind of like a similar situation, just giving like depictions of like different things generated from Brahmā and kind of like some of the pastimes. I guess this one might be like a revamped version of the previous one. So you can see like there, if like you kind of zoom in up top, you can see I don't know actually. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this one, but some of the ones that are kind of like obvious, you can see there's, what's this called? So in the bottom, you can see that Brahmā has given up his body. And so different things were like given up for that. And so that's after the whole incident when Brahmā became attracted to his daughter. And so he gave up his body. And then I believe it just, anyways, it looked like some snakes came out of it. So it was pretty scary. And probably like some super snakes. And so different things came out of that, and so that twilight was created. And so you see up top, there's a woman playing with a ball. And so, anyways, I won't get into all the details of that. So the different demons became attracted to her. And so that body of Brahmā, that subtle body that he gave up, that kind of depiction is being given there. And then you also can see here Brahmā's praying to Vishnu and such. So anyways, I think that's like really amazing. The picture looks like real. Looks like standing right. Brahmā's like standing right there. It's like a lot of detail to his face and everything. So anyways, artwork's amazing. So to kind of get a little bit more into the verse today. So let's see here. So in the, so let me pull this up. So in the verse today, particularly, specifically is being mentioned about religion being manifest and irreligion being manifest and coming into being. And so Prabhupada makes it real clear-cut in his purport that religion is devotional service. And so he quotes this verse actually indirectly, but the savai pumsa paro dharmo yoto bhakti arahok jade haitikiya pratyata yatma suprasidati. So that the supreme dharma, paro dharma, is loving devotional service unto transcendental Lord, and then that devotional service specifically unmotivated and uninterrupted. So giving the definition and the conception of pure devotional service, of pure religion, of real religion. Prabhupada starts off this purport by saying, religion means devotional service to the personality of Godhead, and that's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita and as the Bhagavatam as well. And going on, so in the Bhagavad Gita, the last instruction is to give up all other engagements in the name of religion and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So of course that's a famous verse, Sarva Dharman Parikshita, Mame Kam Sharanam Vraja. So Krishna instructs Arjuna at the end to give up dharma and to surrender unto him. And so that doesn't mean just give up dharma, take up dharma. That's not what that means. But that means that one understanding of that is that any principles which hold one back from taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be given up. Prabhupada ends this purport, in a very amazing way, and it's a huge subject, but he makes the point that anything which does not lead to devotional service of the Lord is irreligion. So something may look very religious, very pious, etc., but if it doesn't bring one to Krishna consciousness, it's irreligion, because it will just further entrap one in the meshes of birth, death, old age, and disease. So it's a very important principle to know and to understand. So we understand from, and you can pull up this verse because I'll get to it, so just kind of get you ready there. So 7:15:42, and I will also pull that up. So we're in a very fortunate position because we're given clarity from our acharyas, from our gurus, from Srila Prabhupada, and from other devotees on what the goal of life actually is. Because the goal of life and religion are the same. They're entwined, actually. In modern day society, there's so many people have a conception of what the goal of life is, or whatever. And it may be quasi-spiritual or not spiritual, very material, very materialistic. Most people's goals of life, generally is just to make a lot of money. Previously, maybe people had the goal of life to get married and have some kids or whatever, but that's completely breaking down now. People are more interested in just making money and whatever, just making ends meet, or being successful, being famous or something like that. So we're given the instructions from our acharyas that the goal of life is Vishnu. And this verse is mentioned in the purport, I believe, but it's mentioned, but in an opposite way. So nate vidu swarta gatim hi Vishnu. So people, they don't know that their ultimate benefit is Vishnu. So the acharyas give us that understanding. And they also, not only do they give us the goal, but then they also give us the instructions on how to reach that goal, which is super valuable. Because if there's some goal or some great, amazing deal or whatever, or whatever, a lot of people, want to get into a certain career or whatever just because it makes a lot of money, but then there's no clear-cut career path how to get there. It's what's the point? So acharyas are, of course, offering much more than some, materialistic career. They're offering, it's even hard to understand, but an eternal position in the spiritual world, in the happiest place that you can be with the happiest people possible, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and just enjoying being engaged in one's constitutional position. Things have gotten so far off in the material world that we can't remember the spiritual world, or there's a doubt even if there is a spiritual world, or for anything more than the chemicals in our body. There's very much, there's a big debate in the material world, at least especially in Kali Yuga. Is God real? Is there life after death, or whatever? And Prabhupada would joke sometimes. There's a funny billboard. He was saying that materialists, there's a billboard, I think in Los Angeles, after death is there sex. And so Prabhupada was laughing, saying that they're interested in the afterlife if there's sex. If not, they don't care. It's anyway some funny little joke. But there's that debate there, and so much things like that. But we're saved from all that. But that's just some section of the population. But that doubt is there. But we're fortunate that we have that direction. And so I'll read a little bit here. So this is from the 15th chapter of the 7th canto, the last chapter. And this chapter is actually, I believe it's called, you have what the name is up top? I think it's something about instructions for civilized human beings. I don't know, I think maybe everybody hasn't read it. Oh, anyways. Oh yeah, okay. So this chapter is really unique. It's anyways, there's so much that's discussed there. You have to read it. I recommend to read it. So I'll read the translation here. So this is kind of just partway through it. So the 10 kinds of air acting within the body are compared to the spokes of the chariot wheels, and the top and bottom of the wheel are called religion and irreligion. The living entity in the bodily concept of life is the owner of the chariot. The Vedic mantra, pranava, is the bow, the pure living entity himself is the arrow, and the target is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So specifically that last time, so the Vedic mantra, pranava, is the bow, the pure living entity himself is the arrow, and the target is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport, and we'll read through some of it, but pretty much the living entity is trying to shoot himself at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'm referring this verse because it's giving the point of what the goal is and what the focus is, and then what the object. So the goal is Krishna, and then the, what did you say exactly that is? And the, I don't know exactly what would be the proper word, but so the goal is Krishna, and that's the direction, but then we ourselves are the object meant to go to that goal. And so it's a very interesting purport, actually. So Prabhupada in the purport discusses that people don't know that that the goal of life is Vishnu. They're confused and lost in the material world. And so when living entity starts to become purified, he starts to become free from the false conception of life. And then, so I'll read some here. So then he takes the arrow of his purified life, and with the help of the bow, the transcendental chanting of the pranava, or the Hare Krishna mantra. So the bow is the Hare Krishna mantra, and the arrow is the living entity, ourselves. He throws himself towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Jadavari Thakur has commented that because the words bow and arrow are used in this verse, one might argue that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and this living entity have become enemies. So Vishwanath Jadavari Thakur is saying they become enemies. However, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead may become the so-called enemy of the living being, this is his chivalrous pleasure. For example, the Lord fought with Bhishma, and when Bhishma pierced the Lord's body on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, this was a kind of humor or relationship of which there are 12. When the conditioned soul tries to reach the Lord by hurling an arrow at him, the Lord takes pleasure, and the living entity gains profit of going back home, back to Godhead. I guess I'll finish it up here. Another example given, this is nice. Another example given in this regard is that Arjuna, as a result of piercing the adhara mina, or the fish within the chakra, achieved the valuable gain of Draupadi. Similarly, if with the arrow of chanting the holy name of the Lord, one pierces Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, by dint of performing this heroic activity, a devotional service, one receives the benefit of returning home back to Godhead. So, anyways, it's very poetic how Prabhupada explains that and says that. And that's one of those things, too, if you regularly read Srila Prabhupada's purports in his books, you understand it's a unique purport, because sometimes the argument is that, well, Prabhupada's just repeating himself. And Prabhupada is not just repeating himself. And Prabhupada sometimes does repeat himself in order to hammer in an important philosophical point to get it across. Like Prabhupada will explain so many times, you're not the body, you're not the body. And then we go outside and immediately we become the body. So Prabhupada understood that point, and so an excellent teacher understands where his students are and instructs them accordingly. So of course, Srila Prabhupada as an acharya is an excellent teacher. Excellent may be an understatement. So of course it is an understatement. So the guru understands the situation of the disciple, understands all the pitfalls and everything. And so the guru's speaking for the benefit of the disciple to hear and take those instructions and apply them in their life. Otherwise, the guru can just go and speak with some of his elevated godbrothers and get into some of the esoteric topics of Krishna Lila. And so the guru may speak such things from time to time in order to remind the disciple what the more details of what the goal looks like, but majority the guru will speak on Sambandha Gyan, in order to help the disciple understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the activities that constitute that, and then from time to time, touching specifically on the prayojan, the goal of life and what that looks like, in order to help inspire the disciple further. So within this purport, we see Srila Prabhupada gives an amazing analogy of the living entity shooting himself at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the instructions of the Acharyas, they constitute the life of the disciple, but also the highest religious principles. There's that reference in one of Bhakti Vikas Maharaj's lectures, but I remember Mahotsa Prabhu would have that as his, ringtone, that there's no higher mantra than the lotus feet of the Guru. And what is that verse? I think, Sarvartarpanam Guruhu. So that one should offer all of his wealth, everything, onto the Guru. So the highest religious principle is complete surrender to the Supreme Personality of God, of course, to the via medium of the spiritual master and his instructions, and doing everything to please him. And so sometimes, and that's a whole big discussion in and of itself, but there can be something which is seen as irreligious can be considered religious when in the proper context. And for us, for the most part, we should do what is proper and be wary of performing a dharma. But we do see great personalities do things from the worldly standpoint, which may not seem as proper according to the status quo, in the name of serving of Krishna or Vishnu. And there's plenty of examples of that. So let's see here. There's just a couple other points, and I'll open for questions. But Prabhupada makes the point in this purport, actually, that the heart is the most important part of the body, whereas the back is the most neglected part. When one is attacked by an enemy, one is apt to endure attacks from the back and protect himself carefully from attacks on the chest. So similarly, we can understand. So of course, as the point being made there is that religion, the front, the body is obviously more important. So religion is very important, and the back can be. You can go without it. Someone comes and whatever wants to stab you, then they stab you in the back. You'll probably be okay. Versus they stab you in your chest, whatever like that. So similarly, also we should understand that in our lives, as far as possible, of course, situations may say otherwise, but we should prioritize Krishna consciousness in our lives, actually, and be wary of letting Krishna consciousness become secondary, of putting things off, of, whatever, giving up chanting, giving up reading, and you think, well, I'll never do that. And people, they do that, one at a time, whatever. Someone may start a business or something, and then, whatever, to make X amount of money, they can make more money if they stop chanting their rounds. And I know a couple of individuals like that. And then they stop chanting their rounds, or they chant 8 rounds, and they give more time to their business. But then what's the point? So you make more money, but in the response of making more money, you've given up, you've compromised on the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that's not going to have a good effect on your consciousness. Now, there may be like necessity, okay, you get sick, and then you can't chant your rounds, okay, but should be wary of giving up principles of Krishna consciousness, or of putting ourselves in a situation where we're weaker unnecessarily. That's the point. And of trying always to put ourselves in a good position, or keeping ourselves in a good position, or putting ourselves in a good position to practice Krishna consciousness. And that can be elaborated on extensively. But like that. And then another example, one devotee started a business and then, eventually just gave up chanting in order just to focus on his business. So, then it's like, maybe like thinking about Krishna from time to time, but then you've neglected the orders of the spiritual master. So it's a general thing, but being wary of that and of keeping that part safe. Because otherwise, if we keep very much safe things which are secondary or maybe not so important, or maybe life's a little bit tougher like this and like that, but then Krishna consciousness is preserved, first of all, we'll be much happier. Like, for instance, it may be easier to live in a part of town or a city or whatever, like a different city that rent is cheaper, but then there's no devotee association there. And whatever, if you have to do that, that's something else, but if you don't have to do that, then you're going to have no devotee association. And if you don't have any devotee association, I don't know if you've ever been without devotee association for long, but it's not very.
I just thought this point you mentioned about forgiveness in the 9th canto, in relation with Jamadagni and Parashuram, this verse comes about forgiveness. After he's killed, I think he kills Kritavya Arjuna, and Jamadagni tells him that you've done wrong. So he says, "My dear son, we are all Brahmanas and have become worshipable for the people in general because of our quality of forgiveness. It is because of this quality that Lord Brahmā, the supreme spiritual master of this universe, has achieved his post." And then he says, "The duty of a Brahmana is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality Godhead Hari is pleased with those who are forgiving." And Srila Prabhupada mentions in that purport of different things that beautify people, just as a woman is beautified by her chastity and faithfulness to her husband. Ugly person becomes beautiful when he becomes a learned scholar. The Brahmanas are beautiful when they're forgiving, Kshatriyas when they are heroic and never retreat from fighting, Vaishyas when they enrich cultural activities and protect cows, and Shudras when they are faithful in discharge of their duties pleasing to their masters. Thus everyone becomes beautiful by his special qualities. And the special quality of a Brahmana, as described here, is forgiveness. So it seems the dharma in each class, and how there is a particular principle of religion that one upholds, in which it's almost like the definition of that class. So it seems like the highest religion of a Brahmana to which you can judge is the ability he's able to forgive. And even Lord Brahmā attained the position by his forgiveness, and his quality of forgiveness. So anyways, you were mentioning it that in the beginning of the class, and it's a good point. Yeah.
It's a good reference. I think it's important, just as trying to create political standards and like that, and renewable pronunciation. But you don't really hear so much like those talks. Usually it's kind of like memorize, and that's good, like memorize some slokas, things like that. But it's like a complete package. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're so intelligent, so many different things, but you're not tolerant. you don't forgive. You're completely biased. Yeah. Looks a little bit funny. Then they can't actually realize.
It's like that principle sometimes we say Madhyama Adhikari means one who preaches, but there's more to them than just the preaching aspect of it.
Yeah.
Anything
else? You were speaking about the I'm glad you pulled up those pictures. It made me think of Rameshwara. How do you say his name? Rameshwaram Prabhu? You probably heard this story, but when we were in Mayapur, he was saying how he used to make the the prints, the pictures in Prabhupada's books, and how I know this story kind of relates to a lot of points in your class, but the prints, they decided to change them. They tried to change some of the pictures in Prabhupada's books, and he had a meeting with Prabhupada about it. And it was like maybe like 30, 40 pictures, and Prabhupada, every single picture, Prabhupada like was chastising him. He said, "Why are you changing these pictures? This looks like he making Krishna look like a hippie." But he was making the point that every time Prabhupada was chastising him, actually he felt that rasa of like I'm being chastised by Prabhupada. Wow. And it kind of made me think that the point you're making, that devotees who are easily offended are actually on the lowest class, the lowest platform. But devotees who are willing to accept chastisement and corrections and are not fazed by it, it kind of sees when they mess up, When devotees mess up, and somebody corrects them, they're like, oh, no. But the highest devotees are always like kind of tolerant of it. But I don't know, this is interesting because you see in our movement, oh, I'm offended, you're offending me, you're offended. But like, if you're really elevated, you're not going to be so offended by certain discrepancies. So I don't know, I just was thinking about that.
The thing that's there, we don't like really mix, not like we don't mix so much like with that crowd, but there's definitely like that class of people that are like, okay, they went through some experience, but they never got over it.
Yeah.
It's anyways. You probably met people like that.
Yeah.
It's like.